Okay, let's discuss the chapter. Let's summarize the part that we've covered so far. We have 47 participants now. Okay. Now this chapter is about those of you who had not attended the class day before. I'm just repeating it for you people. And this chapter is about a Japanese doctor, Sadao Hoki, and his wife Hana, who lived on a Japanese coast. And their house was near the Japanese coast. And they were living very happily, and they both of them had received their higher education in US. Okay, what was the profession? What kind of a doctor was Sadao? Can anyone just tell me what kind of a doctor was he? Why is it that always I have the same students raising their hands? Why can't the others answer? I have the same set of 4 students: Malvika, Vishwajit, Abhay, Alam, and just 1 or 2 more. What about the others? Why nobody from C2 section is responding in the class? I want somebody from C2 section. What kind of a doctor was he? What was his reputation like in Japan? Hurry up, hurry up. Okay, Abhay, respond.
Yes, ma'am, he was a surgeon.
Yes. What else?
And he was working on and he was perfecting
Discovery.
he was also considered as a scientist.
He was a scientist, and he was perfecting a discovery that would render wounds entirely clean, and that was and there was another one of the reasons was why he was not sent along with the troops during the World War, because the Second World War, the backdrop is of the Second World War. And why was he not sent? Can you tell me, Abhay?
Ma'am, because the general of the army was he wanted that he should stay in he should stay in Japan, because he's a renowned doctor, and he could help the country with that situation.
Not the country, but the general himself, because the general might need him at any point of time, and he trusted nobody else. So that is why he was not sent. And one day, while Sadao and his wife, they were standing in their veranda, what did they see? They saw that a person just flung open from the ocean, and when they went near him, they saw that it was a white man. Okay, and he was badly wounded. After having a closer look at him, Sadao saw that he was hurt badly by a gunshot, and there was a moral dilemma that was going on in his mind, whether to help him or to just again hand him over to the police, or to just send him back again to the sea. But then he couldn't take that. Both he and his wife couldn't take that harsh decision, and humanity won. And because he was a doctor also, they took him inside, and they started treating him. And the servants, they were afraid that the servants would retaliate, and this happened also, as Yumi said that she is not going to wash, she's not going to clean that person, because she had never she said that she had never in her life cleaned an American, a white man, and she would not clean a one which is the one which is so dirty now. Okay, and see, as far as I can see on my screen, there is only Radhika, roll number 10, who has enabled her videos. The others, if you're not having any network issues, please enable your videos. I've asked you so many times. I fail to understand why do you want me to repeat the same thing again and again in the class. So we are going to continue from where we left. It's on page number 31. And she said that I've never washed a white man, she said, and I will not wash so dirty a one now. This is this was the line that we had done earlier, and we'll continue from here, and I'll try to share the screen today. Okay, Hana cried at her severely. Let's see if I can. Where is that screen? It says you are sharing the screen. Let me see. Okay, it's here. Hana cried at her severely. You will do what your master commands you. So she says, it is the order of your masters, as Dr. Sadao had asked me to tell you to clean him. There was so fierce a look of resistance upon Yumi's round, dull face that Hannah felt unreasonably afraid. Now, when she ordered her to wash the man, the servant became so aggressive and she resisted so much that it appeared on her face, and from that, Hannah got afraid. And after all, if the servants, and why was she afraid? Because she felt that if the servant should report something that was not as it happened, okay, if they are going to report to the police, and what would happen to them? They would be arrested, and what would be the future of the children, of the future of Sadao, and everything would be ruined. So she got afraid, and she just said very well, she said with dignity, you understand, we only want to bring him to his senses so that we can turn him over as a prisoner. And she just said, but the servant replied, I will have nothing to do with it. I am a poor person and it is not my business. See, she just said that I'm here to take care, I'm the nanny of the children. I'm here to take care of the children. So this is not my business. This is none of my duty. So I'm not going to help you in this work. Then please, Hannah said gently, return to your own work. At once Yumi left the room, but this left Hannah with the white man alone. She might have been too afraid to stay, had not her anger at Yumi's stubbornness now sustained her. Can anyone just explain me the meaning of this line? Can you just explain the meaning? She might have been too afraid. Malvika had raised her hand. Yes. Yes, Malvika. Where is Malvika? I still have people joining in. Why are you people so late? Every time. It's already 10 minutes past 12. Yes, Malvika. Malvika?
Ma'am, in these lines, the Yumi left the room, but Hannah, who at the first did not want to be in the room with the white man, that is American, but at this point of time, Hannah also do not leave the room, whereas she be in the room with the white man, and she's not afraid and not angry at Yumi now.
No, it was her anger at Rumi that made her, that encouraged her to stay there. Because Yumi was so adamant, she was so stubborn that she didn't, that she just said that she's not going to do anything with the white man. So she was very angry at Yumi, and because of her anger, that anger towards Yumi, that encouraged her to stay there with the white man. That just in the stupid Yumi, she muttered fiercely, is this anything but a man and a wounded, helpless man? So she calls Yumi stupid, and she says that who is this man? This is just a helpless man, and who is wounded. And why was she so why was she retaliating? Why was she so afraid of him? In the conviction of her own superiority, she bent impulsively and untied the knotted rugs. In the conviction, what do you mean by conviction? What is conviction? Conviction is belief.
Strong belief.
Strong belief, yes. In the belief of her own superiority, she felt that she was superior, much superior to this man who was just a helpless, wounded man and was lying in an unconscious state in front of her. So what did she do? She just bent impulsively. Impulsively, the thing that you do, not voluntarily. It happens on its own. And she just bent over him and she untied the knotted rugs that kept the white man covered. She just untied his rugs and she started... she dipped the small clean towel that Yumi had brought into the steaming hot water and washed his face carefully. After untying him, she just soaked the towel with water and with hot water, and she started washing his face. The man's skin, though rough with exposure, was of a fine texture and must have been very blonde when he was a child. So even though the skin was very rough, it had become rough because of exposure. But now, after it was cleaned, she felt that it was of a very fine texture and it must have been very blonde. Very blonde means of a very light color. Then he was a child. So will Hannah help the wounded man and wash him herself? She has already done it. While she was thinking these thoughts, though not really liking the man better now that he was no longer a child, she kept on washing him until his upper body was quite clean. Okay, even though he was washed and she was cleaning him herself, she had not developed a kind of a liking for him. She still hated him because he was their enemy. But she dared not turn him over. There was Sadao. Now her anger was ebbing. What is ebbing? What is ebbing? Anybody from the class? Again, Malvika. Yes, Malvika, because you are still unmuted.
Ma'am, the anger was reducing.
Yes, it was declining, it was reducing, and she was anxious again. And she rose, wiping her hands on the wrong towel. Then, lest the man be chilled, she put the quilt over him. Initially, she didn't want to give that quilt because it was a very fine quilt that she had, a silk quilt. But now, she just, because she didn't want that the man should die, she didn't want that he should feel chilled, he should feel cold. So she just put the quilt over him. Sadao, she called softly. He had been about to come in when she called. His hand had been on the door and now he opened it. She saw that he had brought his surgeon's emergency bag and that he wore his surgeon's coat. You have decided to operate, she cried. Yes, he said shortly. He turned his back to her and unfolded a sterilized towel upon the floor of the tokonoma alcove. What is tokonoma alcove? And it's an alcove. It's a kind of a compartment. It's a kind of a cubicle in the room, in the home, for displaying flower arrangement or any other piece of art. Okay, so and put his instruments out upon it. He just kept his instruments, placed his instruments upon the alcove. Fetch towels, he said. She went obediently, but how anxious now, to the linen shelves and took out the towels. There ought also to be old pieces of matting so that the blood would not ruin the fine floor covering. She went out to the back veranda where the gardener kept strips of matting with which to protect delicate shrubs on cold nights, and took an armful of them. Now, she was very, possessive about the things that she had in her home, and she had maintained them very nicely, and she didn't want any of her things, any of her, mattresses, any of the things to get spoiled, to get ruined. So she just went outside to get the mattings, the old mattings, the strips of mattings which the gardener must have kept, to protect the delicate shrubs. So she went outside and she felt that she would get those mattings and she would spread them over her mattress. Okay, but when she went back into the room, she saw this was useless. Why was this useless? Because the blood had already soaked through the packing in the man's wound and had ruined the mat under him. The mat was already spoiled. It was already ruined. Okay, oh, the mat, she cried. Yes, it is ruined. Sadao replied, as though he did not care. He was a scientist, he was a doctor, and he was only concerned about his patient right now. He didn't care about the mattress or the mat or anything else. So he just said, help me to turn him. He commanded her. He ordered her that she is now required to help him in order to just turn the young man over. She obeyed him without a word, and he began to wash the man's back carefully. Yumi would not wash him, she said. Did you wash him then? Sadao asked, not stopping for a moment, his swift, concise movements. So he was a very skillful, a very experienced doctor, and very precisely and concisely he was carrying on his work, and he didn't stop even for a single moment. Yes, she said. He did not seem to hear her, but she was used to this absorption. Then he was at work. She was, she was accustomed to this kind of absorption which her husband had whenever he was operating upon somebody. She wondered for a moment if it mattered to him what was the body upon which he worked, so long as it was for the work he did so excellently. So she was just thinking whether the man was, whether her husband was thinking him to be a white man now, because now at that point of time, it was only his patient, a patient whom he wanted to be better, and it didn't matter to him who that patient was, whether he was from an enemy country or not. At that point of time, it was immaterial. You will have to give the anesthetic if he needs it, he said. Now another order has come from him that the anesthesia has to be given by Hana. Now, what is an anesthetic? Anesthetic is, whenever somebody is to be operated upon, they are given anesthesia. Why? Because if they're given anesthesia, then they don't feel the pain. Okay, so he says that you have to give the anesthetic. She repeated blankly, but never have I. So this is not something, I'm not a professional in this. This is not something that I do every day. In fact, I've never given anesthesia to anybody in my life so far. Let me see if I can find out the text now. Just give me one moment. The next paragraph we have it in the option. Okay. It is easy enough, he said, impatient. He was getting impatient because the patient needed anesthesia at that point of time, and he was taking out the packing now, and the blood began to flow more quickly. Initially, he had staunched the flow of blood. He had, blocked the flow of blood, but he had packed the flow of blood, but now he was again, the moment he touched it, the moment he took out that packing, the blood started flowing quickly. He peered into the wound. What is peering into the wound? What is peering? This is such an easy word. What is peering into the wound? Nobody knows the meaning of peering? P-E-E-R. What is P-E-E-R? Looking closely. He looked closely into the wound, and what he found, with a bright surgeon's light that was just fastened to his forehead. If you can see into the your text, it is the picture is there. It is tied to his forehead. The bullet is still there. He said with cool interest, now I wonder how deep this rock wound is. If it is not too deep, it may be that I can get the bullet. But the bleeding is not superficial. So he was talking to himself, and he was wondering how deep the wound was. And he said, if the bleeding is not superficial, he said, but the bleeding is not superficial. That means the bleeding is deep enough. He has lost much blood. So he doesn't know how he's going to go about the man, because the man has already lost a lot of blood. At this moment, Hannah choked. Hannah choked means she felt a lot of suffocation. She felt like vomiting. You know, a person who is not a doctor, a person who has never witnessed an operation going on in front of her eyes earlier would definitely feel like that only. So she felt like choking, she felt like vomiting out, and she just felt suffocated. He looked up and he saw her face, the color of sulfur. Her face has turned totally pale. Don't faint, he said sharply. He cried sharply, and he asked her not to faint, because he was too much absorbed in the operation. He couldn't, at that point of time, leave the operation and look after her. He did not put down his exploring instrument. If I stop now, the man will surely die. She clapped her hands to her mouth. She just put her hands to her mouth, and she just jumped up and ran out of the room because she had started vomiting. Outside in the garden, he heard her retching. Retching means he heard that sound of vomiting. But he just went on with his work. It will be better for her to empty her stomach. When she would come back, she would have already emptied her stomach, and she would feel better. This is what he thought. He had forgotten that, of course, she had never seen an operation. But her distress, the distress that Hannah was going through, and his inability to go to her at once made him impatient. But all these things that were going on in his life right now, his wife had started vomiting seeing that operation, and he was not able to, comfort her. All these things made him impatient and irritable also. And he got irritable. He got irritable with the man. Okay, this man who was just lying like dead under his knife. Okay, this man, he thought, there is no reason under heaven why he should live. He was thinking to himself, and he was wondering, why is this person alive? Why I am taking care of him? Why I am trying to operate upon him? There is no reason why this person should live. He is an escaped prisoner of war, and he should die like that only. Unconsciously, this thought made him ruthless, and he proceeded swiftly. This just thought that this person has no right to live. This thought made him ruthless. It made him cruel, and he proceeded fastly. He started moving his instruments very fastly. In his dream, the man moaned. He groaned. The person, even though he was unconscious, he started moaning and groaning. But Sadao paid no heed except to mutter to him. He just muttered. He just mumbled something, but he didn't pay any attention. Paying heed to somebody is paying attention to that person. So he paid no heed to him means he paid no attention to him, and he just carried on with his work. Groan, he muttered. Groan if you like. So you can carry on with your moaning if you want to. I'm not doing this for my own pleasure. In fact, I don't even know why I am doing it. He says, I'm not doing this to please myself, and I fail to understand why actually I'm doing it. I shouldn't have done it. The door opened, and there was Hannah again. where is the anesthetic? She asked in a clear voice. Now she was feeling better and she just asked her husband where the anesthetic was. Sadao motioned with his chin. It is as well that you came back. This fellow is beginning to stir. So he's beginning to stir means he started showing his movements. He started moving slightly, so he needs to be given the anesthetic right now. She had the bottle and some cotton in her hand, but how shall I do it? She says, I don't even know how to do it. In those times when this thing had happened, they didn't have those injections. Now we don't give anesthesia like this, and you soak the cotton with the anesthesia and you keep it close to the nostrils. Now we just what do the anesthetists do? They just they just inject the anesthesia into the body of the patient. But during those days, things didn't happen that way. Okay, so she had the bottle and some fine cotton in her hand, and she just asked him, how shall I do it? He said, simply saturate the cotton and hold it near his nostrils. Simply soak the cotton. Dip the cotton in anesthesia, soak it in anesthesia, and hold that cotton near his nostrils. Sadao replied without delaying for one moment. The intricate detail of his work, the work that he was doing, was full of complexities. He didn't delay in that work. When he breathes badly, and he told his wife then that when the man starts breathing with a little difficulty, then you have to move that cotton away. Okay, this is how anesthesia used to be given in those days. She crouched close to the sleeping face of the young American. It was a piteously thin face. It was a very thin. She went closer to him to have a close look at him, and it was a very thin face, she thought, and the lips were twisted. The man was suffering. Okay, he was in a lot of pain. His lips gave the sign that he was suffering, whether he knew it or not. Watching him, she wondered if the stories they heard sometimes of the sufferings of prisoners were true. So she was just thinking of that she had heard a lot of stories, a lot of rumors about how the prisoners were treated so badly in prisons, and whether those rumors were true. They came like flickers of rumor. They were just like slight rumors which she had heard, told by word of mouth, and always contradicted. In the newspapers, the reports were always that wherever the Japanese armies went, the people received them gladly with cries of joy and at their liberation. But sometimes she remembered such men as General Takima. So she's thinking of the general who won so many battles, but at home he used to beat his wife cruelly. Okay. Though no one mentioned it. And why nobody mentioned it? Because he had fought so victorious a battle in Manchuria. But at home, he was ruthless with his own wife. Okay, if a man like that could be so cruel to a woman in his power, would he not be cruel to one like this? For instance, he was thinking about people like General Takima. If they could be so cruel to their own wives, how would they treat such people like this man who are the prisoner of wars? Okay. She hoped anxiously that this young man had not been tortured. She was thinking to herself, and she was just hoping that this man had not been tortured like the stories that she had heard about prisoners of war. And it was at this moment that she observed deep red scars on his neck. And at that very moment, she saw scars on his neck and just under the ear. Okay, those scars, she murmured, lifting her eyes to Sadao, but he didn't answer. At this moment, he felt the tip of his instrument strike against something hard. And what was that thing? The bullet. Because he knew it that the bullet was still there, dangerously near the kidney. There was the bullet was near the kidney. Okay? Sakshi is coming now. The meeting is about to end. Okay. Roll number 37, Sakshi. She's joining now. All thought left him. He felt only the purest pleasure. Why did he feel? Can anyone just tell me why did he feel purest pleasure at this moment? Anybody? Yes, Vishwajit.
He felt the purest pleasure because he found the bullet which he thought that if the wound is deep, so he will not be able to do so.
Yes, he found the bullet that gave him purest pleasure. He probed with his fingers delicately, familiar with every atom of this human body. With his fingers, he examined. What did he examine? He examined this bullet, and his old American professor of anatomy had seen to that knowledge. What knowledge? The knowledge that Sadao had gained in his college. And what was that knowledge, and what his anatomy professor had taught them? Ignorance, underline this. If you have your textbooks in front of you, this is very important. Ignorance of the human body is the surgeon's cardinal sin, sirs. He says, if you don't know about the human body, then it is your chief sin. It is like murder. It is like you are murdering somebody. Okay. He had thundered at his classes year after year to operate without as complete knowledge of the body as if you had made it anything less than that is murder. Whenever you're going to operate upon somebody, this is what his professor had taught his classes year after year, that whenever you are there and whenever you're going to operate upon somebody, you should operate it as if you have made that body. That means you need to know where each and every atom is housed. And anything less than that, if you're not clear about any particular atom or any particular cell in the body, then you should not operate, because it would be no less than a murder. Okay, it is not quite at the kidney, my friend. Underline this phrase also, my friend. He says, it is not quite at the kidney, my friend. Sadao murmured. It was his habit to murmur to the patient when he forgot himself in an operation. So he was used to it. He was accustomed to calling his patients as my friend whenever he was operating upon them. My friend, he always called his patients. And so now he did, forgetting that this was his enemy. So at that moment, he just forgot that this particular person who was lying in front of him and upon whom he was operating was his enemy, and he called him his friend. Got it? Then quickly, with the cleanest and most precise of incisions. What is incision? Cut. With the most precise cut, the bullet was out. The man quivered, the man trembled, but he was still unconscious. Nevertheless, he muttered a few English words. He mumbled something, he muttered some words. Guts, he muttered, choking. They got my guts. He says, they just hit me at my intestines. They've got my guts. Sadao, Hana cried sharply. Hush, Sadao said. He just asked his wife to be quiet. The man sank again into silence so profound, silence that was so deep, that Sadao took up his wrist. For a moment, Sadao felt that he was no more, hating to the touch of it. Yes, but he found the pulse. There was still a pulse, but it was so faint, so feeble, but enough if he wanted the man to live. So if Sadao wanted that the man should live, he would be able to revive him. This is what he felt. To give hope. But certainly I do not want this man to live, he thought. No more anesthetic. Time and again that moral dilemma comes into his mind, whether why is he saving that man, why is he operating upon him, and he again thinks to himself, I surely don't want this man to live because he's from an enemy country. No more anesthetic, he told Hana. He turned as swiftly as though he had never paused, and from his medicines, what did he take out? He chose a small vial and from it filled a hypodermic. He just took out a cylindrical container. You understand? आपने injection सबने देखा हुआ है कैसा injection एक cylindrical सा छोटा सा container होता है, ठीक है? उसमें से he just filled what is a hypodermic? He filled his syringe with that the contents of that vial and thrust it into the patient's left arm. Okay, he injected that medicine into his arm, and then putting down the needle, he took the man's wrist again. The pulse under his fingers, the moment he was injected with that medicine, his pulse started fluttering. What is fluttering? It's started moving irregularly, once or twice, and then the pulse grew stronger. So initially the pulse was very faint, but now it grew stronger. Now we have 3 minutes and 5 seconds left. I just wanted to ask you, there are many students. We have 56 participants right now. We had 60 earlier. I don't know who 4 have left. So only these students would be marked present today. These 56 students, okay? Because if I put it in the group, sometimes there are certain students who tell me that they had attended the class, but when I'm taking the attendance, if you're not visible, then you won't be marked present.